Hey guys, AJ with Practical Performance here. Got a little bit of a thing with zeroing going on today that I wanted to talk with you guys about. So what I've got here, right, is my Modern Samurai Project target, right? And I'm going to use this as my zeroing target. And I'll show you different ways we can do this. But I typically use two types of zero, right? I have what I call a hasty zero, which a lot of you are probably familiar with. It's a 10-yard zero. Right, and I'll use a 1-inch square for that kind of a zero. The nice thing about that hasty zero is I can go anywhere in the country that has 10 yards, which every range I've ever been to, indoor, outdoor, doesn't matter. They've got 10 yards. So I can use this zero to at least get that hasty zero on my gun. The next thing I'm going to show you guys is more of a refined zero. Now, this is what I do with my guns, okay? And I will take them out to about 20 yards, 25 yards, dependent. And I'm going to give myself a little more generous target. More on that later. But first, let's get that 1-inch target done. So what I have today, right? I have my carry gun, and I'm going to zero with my carry ammo. All right, guys, I'm a huge believer that if your gun is your carry gun, you should stay and always be zeroed for your carry ammo. And we'll see maybe what that looks like from my carry ammo to my training ammo. But it's important that we zero with our most critical ammunition. And so I'm not cheating. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give that a bold adjustment. So now we're going to go back to 10 yards. I'm going to shoot my carry ammo and we're going to get a zero on this. So let's go ahead and do that. On the target, I'm going to go for that 1-inch square that we saw at the top. One thing about zeroing, you can see today I'm using a red dot. I'm going to want to bring the brightness of my dot down pretty much as I can while still seeing the dot. That gets me just a little more refinement. Again, visual focus still on the thing I'm shooting, not the dot. All right, guys. So what I've got is I've got 3 rounds here, all right? But I've got something interesting happening. I'll tell you guys, for me, I never trust to zero off that first group out of the gun. A lot of people will tell you, oh, it's a cold, clean bore, it's this, it's that. Honestly, it's less about a cold gun and more about the cold shooter, all right? So I've got 3 rounds here. I've got 2 touching. This was the square I was aiming at, right? And I've got 1 high. So now here's the interesting thing. Again, not trusting that first group. I'm going to reshoot that, and I'm going to see what happens, because this could be me putting the gun exactly where it needs to be and pressing a good shot, and then healing just a little bit up here. Or this could be the good shot, and this could be me just mistiming that recoil a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mark these, and then we're going to shoot it again. So, like I said, don't trust that first group out of the gun. As we can see here, I fired 1, 2, and 3. Now, I called this shot as me just mistiming that recoil a little bit. I gave the gun too much, and that dropped her down. It'd be nice that I could lie to myself and tell me that this was the square I was aiming at, but it wasn't. I was still aiming at this square. So I know now that I've got rounds impacting high with this gun. Now, I'm going to introduce you guys to a concept I learned way back in the day in the military as an artilleryman, right? Known as bracketing. Okay, because I've established rounds above my target, I'm going to make a bold correction on my sight and make sure that I try and establish rounds below my target. That'll look something like that, right? And that'll be our first bracket. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give my gun a lot of clicks. I don't care what the click value of your optic is. It doesn't really matter. It's going to be a half turn of the dial because this one won't go another full turn. So half turn of the dial, we're going to see where that puts us. Okay, guys, so now I've established a bracket. Maybe not the tightest group shooting, probably not even tight enough for what I'm trying to do here today, but it'll be good enough for our initial bracket. Those 3 rounds impacted here, here, and here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and mark and let myself know how much adjustment. Off that bracket, that's a half turn. Okay, so now that I've established above and below the intended target, what I can do is I start having my adjustments. So I cut each adjustment in half. So my last adjustment was a half turn of the wheel. I'm going to go a quarter turn of the wheel. All right, guys, mathematically this works out. Once I've established this, I will be zeroed within 5 repetitions. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to make a quarter adjustment on that wheel, back up, and we're going to see where that prints. All right, guys, so we just made that quarter wheel adjustment, and let's see what that worked out. So I'm going to make this mark, and I'm going to bring it right to the center of my group. Now, I got kind of lucky, I guess, right? That was a quarter of an adjustment, and that brought my 2 rounds there, and I've got 1 round slightly high. So I can based off of that, I've got 2 rounds in the center of the box, 1 round high. I'm going to call that one my flyer. All right, this is close enough for my hasty zero, knowing that I'm going to go back to 20 and get a little more refined zero. Now, if this were my only zero, I would shoot another group here to confirm that. All right, but again, you can see how cutting your adjustments in half, you're going to find that middle every single time. Every single time. And we'll see that again out at the 20. So now at the 20, where we're headed next, we're actually going to change the targets. I'm going to move to this 2-inch square on the target. The reason I use a 2-inch square is I'm using the same methodology at 10 and 20. So at 10 yards, this is a 1-inch square. That's a 10-minute of angle target for you guys that understand minutes of angle. When I move back to 20 yards, that's a 2-inch square. Again, it's a 10-minute of angle target. So by using that same methodology, right, I'm maintaining the same level of precision at a greater distance. It's comparing apples and apples, all right? You can't go out to 25 and use an 8-inch circle and call it just as good of a zero as you did on the 1-inch square. Let's go ahead back there, and we'll go ahead and we'll shoot on these 2-inch squares. Okay, so we're back at the target now, right? And we can see where that group started to print on that 2-inch square. Now, I'll tell you this, right? These 2 shots I called perfectly. This guy, I broke the shot just a little bit early before I was ready for it, okay? But you can see how we've got a trend. We're definitely high on the target, even though we were good to go on that 1-inch square. So I'm going to refine it just a little bit. Because my last adjustment was a quarter up, I'm going to now adjust an 1/8 down. So that's an 1/8 of the turn down. All right, guys, so we're back at the target again. So I was hoping this was going to happen eventually, right? I've shot my 3 shots. I made that 1/8 adjustment on the optic, but you can see how really there was no change in my zero. So here's the fun thing, right? Because mathematically I know I have to fall within that last 1/8, I know that it has to be between these 2 adjustments. So what I'm going to do, again, I'm going to bring it, instead of going up again, I'm going to bring it down the remainder, cutting that 1/8 to about a 1/16. That's going to give me about, on this optic, 4 clicks down. So interesting, guys. You know, no do-overs. You're seeing this for the realsies, right? I printed a group, and it was here, here, and here, right? So I thought, you know what? I'm getting a little visually confused. Let me clean up the target a little bit. But again, I did not do my part. 1 there, 1 there, 1 there. So based off of the previous accuracy, we know I'm just not shooting the gun correctly. So I have to know that and be honest with myself. I'm not going to make any adjustments on the gun. I'm going to go back. I'm going to try and print a better group on that target so I can get a true understanding of the size of my target. So we're back at the target for our last group. I did shift over. I was having some issues back at the 20, so we shifted over, did a little dry fire, make sure I'm doing what I need to do on the trigger, and then just printed this group on the R over here. And as you can see, I've got 1, 2, 3 rounds touching that 2-inch square. That is my level of accuracy. If they touch the 2-inch square, I'm happy with it, okay? So I'm gonna call this zeroed for that gun. That's the bracketing process I use when I go out and I zero the gun. If you guys notice, we made 1, 2, 3, 4 adjustments to get us where we wanted to get. Now, could I refine that a little bit more? Sure, but I gotta make sure my shooting's up to the task. For what we're doing, for my ammo, for today, I'm good with that, and sometimes good enough is good enough. Thanks for coming out, guys. If you have any questions on this technique, feel free to reach out to me. Zito at practicalperformance.org. Shoot LAS Concealment.